What if I told you that one of the greatest Final Fantasy games ever made isn't a mainline title? And what if I told you that without it, some of the most beloved RPGs in history might never have existed? Sounds bold, right? But the truth is, this game didn't just refine its genre, it redefined it. A tactical RPG that took storytelling, strategy, and world-building to another level, shaping the very foundation of what came after. So why, even decades later, has no game truly surpassed it? Today, we uncover the legacy of Final Fantasy Tactics, the game that still stands undefeated. Final Fantasy Tactics wasn't the first tactical RPG, not even close. Long before its 1997 release in Japan, franchises like Fire Emblem and Front Mission had already laid the foundation for the genre. But while those games pioneered tactical RPG mechanics, Final Fantasy Tactics was the game that elevated them, reshaping the genre and making it mainstream. This wasn't just another strategy game, it was a revolution. Its influence extended far beyond its own success, shaping the future of games like Fire Emblem, which, despite its early roots, might not have gained worldwide recognition without the impact of Final Fantasy Tactics. But to truly understand why this game became legendary, we have to go back even further, to a title that paved the way for its existence, Tactics Ogre. The mastermind behind both games was Yasumi Matsuno, one of the most brilliant minds in gaming during the 90s and early 2000s. In 1993, Matsuno, working with Quest Corporation, created a groundbreaking strategy RPG series called Ogre Battle. While beloved by those who played it, Ogre Battle remained a niche franchise, never quite reaching mainstream success. The turning point came with Tactics Ogre, released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo. It refined the tactical RPG formula, introducing deep strategic gameplay and a complex political narrative set in the war-torn land of Valeria. Unlike many RPGs of its time, Tactics Ogre wasn't about saving the world from an all-powerful villain. It was about navigating the brutal realities of war, shifting alliances, and morally gray decisions. This caught the attention of Squaresoft, leading to one of the most significant acquisitions in gaming history. Take everything that made Tactics Ogre special and craft a new experience within the Final Fantasy universe. Tactics Ogre was groundbreaking in two fundamental ways. First, its dark and politically charged narrative was unlike anything seen in RPGs at the time. Instead of a simple good versus evil plot, the game presented a world driven by power struggles, betrayals, and morally complex choices. The second innovation was its battlefield design. Unlike most RPGs where positioning was secondary, Tactics Ogre made terrain a core part of its strategy. Battles felt like a game of chess, where every movement and elevation change could determine victory or defeat. This level of tactical and narrative depth was nearly unmatched, making the game feel far ahead of its time, something that Final Fantasy Tactics would later refine into near perfection. But what's even more fascinating is the small details that shaped Tactics Ogre's identity. The game's subtitle, Let Us Cling Together, was inspired by a song from Queen, one of Matsuno's favorite bands. If you haven't played Tactics Ogre yet, now might be the perfect time. The game received a remastered version called Tactics Ogre Reborn, available on PlayStation, PC, and Nintendo Switch. Built upon the PSP remake, it brings modern refinements to a classic that still holds up as one of the best tactical RPGs ever made. But let's shift focus to what came next. By 1995, Yasumi Matsuno was already working at Squaresoft, and his next project wasn't just another game, it was a challenge. Taking a niche tactical RPG formula and merging it with the Final Fantasy franchise was no small feat. Expectations were high, and failure wasn't an option. Creating a spin-off is already difficult, but creating one that stands on the same level as the franchise's mainline titles? That's a whole different game. The balance had to be perfect, appealing to hardcore strategy fans while still feeling like a Final Fantasy experience. It could have gone horribly wrong, but Matsuno had a vision. He didn't just meet expectations, he shattered them. Released in 1997 in Japan and 1998 in other regions, Final Fantasy Tactics introduced players to Ivalice, a kingdom devastated by the aftershocks of the 50 Years' War. The throne was empty, and two factions vied for power: Goltana, the Black Lion, and Lark, the White Lion. What started as a dispute for succession quickly spiraled into full-scale war, known as the War of the Lions. At the center of it all was Ramza Buev, a young noble caught in a conflict far greater than any political struggle. The story wasn't just about kings and warlords, it was about hidden truths, betrayal, and a deep-seated corruption that stretched far beyond what anyone imagined. Final Fantasy Tactics delivered a narrative that was far more intricate and politically charged than anything the series had seen before. It wasn't a simple battle of good versus evil, but a layered story where every character had their own motivations, alliances shifted, and the cost of war felt painfully real. What made Ramza a truly exceptional protagonist was the depth of his character compared to previous Final Fantasy protagonists. While many heroes in the series were defined by destiny, revenge, or a clear battle between good and evil, Ramza's struggle was deeply personal. He wasn't a chosen one, nor did he wield legendary powers. He was simply a nobleman trying to navigate a world where loyalty was fleeting, corruption ran deep, and doing the right thing often came at a devastating cost. His journey wasn't about defeating an ancient evil, but about standing against a system that had long abandoned its ideals. Unlike the confident and larger-than-life heroes of past Final Fantasy games, Ramza was filled with doubt, constantly questioning himself and the world around him. This internal conflict, combined with the game's morally complex world, made him one of the most human and relatable protagonists the series had ever seen. To put it in perspective, if Final Fantasy VI had the grand, adventurous tone of Star Wars, then Final Fantasy Tactics was more akin to Berserk or Game of Thrones. Dark, politically intricate, and brutally unforgiving. It was a massive tonal shift for a series that had primarily focused on fantasy epics with clear-cut heroes and villains. This game wasn't just about saving the world, it was about questioning who truly holds power and what it means to fight for justice when the very concept of justice is manipulated by those in control. This approach set Final Fantasy Tactics apart, attracting an audience looking for a more mature and thought-provoking experience. The game's release in 1998 in the West placed it in a crucial position, launching between two juggernauts, Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. The timing couldn't have been better. The franchise was at its peak, and anything carrying the Final Fantasy name had instant credibility. And that gamble paid off. The game sold over 1 million copies in Japan alone and became one of the most successful tactical RPGs in history, opening doors for the genre in markets where it had previously struggled. At a time when companies like Nintendo were hesitant to bring certain RPGs to the West, Squaresoft and Sony took a chance on Final Fantasy Tactics, believing in the strength of the game itself. It was a risk that helped shape the future of tactical RPGs, proving that deep, strategy-driven gameplay had a place in the mainstream. But make no mistake, this game wasn't carried by its title alone. It stood on its own as a masterpiece, elevating the tactical RPG genre in a way no other game had before. Now, if you're enjoying the video and want to support the channel, there's an easy way to help without spending anything extra. By using the affiliate links in the description, any purchase you make, whether it's a game, a console, or even something completely unrelated, helps the channel at no additional cost to you. It's a simple way to keep this content going while getting what you need. So if you're planning to grab anything from Amazon or other partners, consider using those links. Your support makes a huge difference. Now, let's get back to the video. One of the defining features that set Final Fantasy Tactics apart was its deep and flexible job system. Unlike many tactical RPGs at the time, which often restricted character progression to predefined classes, Final Fantasy Tactics allowed players to mix and match abilities across a wide variety of jobs, creating endless strategic possibilities. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a core element that made every battle feel unique and encouraged experimentation. For longtime fans of the series, the inclusion of classic jobs like Knight, Black Mage, and Summoner brought a familiar Final Fantasy feel to a completely new genre. At the same time, it introduced players unfamiliar with tactical RPGs to a system that was both intuitive and rewarding. The game struck a perfect balance between depth and accessibility. While mastering job combinations required careful planning, the progression system was never overwhelming, making it far more inviting than other tactical RPGs of the era, like Fire Emblem, which was notorious for its punishing difficulty. That doesn't mean Final Fantasy Tactics was an easy game, it wasn't, but its challenge felt fair. Battles required strategy and patience, but the job system allowed for creativity in overcoming obstacles, ensuring that players never felt completely stuck. This level of flexibility was rare at the time and would go on to influence countless RPGs in the years to come. Beyond its gameplay, Final Fantasy Tactics also introduced players to the kingdom of Ivalice, a world so rich in history and political intrigue that it would later serve as the setting for games like Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy XII. Without Final Fantasy Tactics, the Kingdom of Ivalice, one of the most richly developed settings in gaming, might never have existed in the form we know today. For those who want to experience this masterpiece today, the War of the Lions version on PSP and mobile is the definitive edition. It refines the original with updated dialogue, animated cutscenes, and additional content that further expands the already incredible story. If you've never played Final Fantasy Tactics, this is the best way to do it. And yet, despite its legendary status, Square Enix has yet to give the game the full remaster it deserves. But let's be real, it's only a matter of time. This isn't just any game, it's one of the most important RPGs ever made. It revolutionized the genre, introduced one of the most compelling narratives in gaming, and remains, even decades later, a masterpiece that no other game has truly surpassed. Final Fantasy Tactics wasn't just great, it was groundbreaking, and that's why its legacy will never fade. But now, I want to hear from you. Have you played it? What are your favorite memories or strategies? Drop a comment below, we read and reply to every single one. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and keeps this content coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.